such an honor and a privilege. And I also want to thank them for even bringing this together. You know, I've worked in the past through my other work of putting together international conferences. It takes a lot of work. I was that person, you know, resources, money, fundraising, not talking to your family to make something like this happen so we can get together for professional development and again to network, meet new acquaintances. So let's give a what's up, Yahoo, to the AABC. Good work. So about myself, you kind of heard about me a little bit, but I think I can work this. So I am an independent primary midwife. I was trained with the Massachusetts Midwives Alliance back in Massachusetts. I now live in Portland, Oregon, and I travel around the country. Looking at the need to increase capacity, I created a doula training that's Afrocentric in 2002, the first in the country. And what's so wonderful about this training really builds Black midwives and midwives of color. They think they're doulas, but in the end, they've done the study, 3/4 become midwives. And also, it's important for us to understand that doulas are getting a big name, which is good, but it really should be the midwives, because the midwives are the ones, as you all know, that make sure that infant mortality is reduced, and that maternal child health is improved, and that families, fathers, partners, wives, how we identify, is respected. So we love doulas, but we want the doulas to understand that they're in collaboration with midwifery. We want the community to really celebrate midwives and get our name back out there again as the revolutionary spiritual women that we have always been doing this work. So that's the piece that we do with the training. And then after doing years of public work, health work anyways, I decided to go back and get a master's in that, so that was fun. And then I've done some work. So I'm reading I don't watch the news a lot, but my husband watches the news. But what I do, whenever I fly, I buy the New York Times. So if you want to know what's happening, get the New York Times on the flight when you fly. So I read the whole paper, and on page 8.3, it has a section on what's happening, and one was on the 2 bills that passed. It says that Minnesota and Oregon have a bill passed for Medicaid where doulas can be reimbursed to certain Medicaid families. So I want to say that me and my husband formed that Medicaid bill in Oregon. So I want to put that out there. And what the New York Times is talking about, they say that we should have postpartum doulas. Well, that bill was HB 3311, and the whole goal was to have postpartum doulas. It was supposed to be a comprehensive bill where people on Medicaid could get a doula who could help them during the labor and afterwards. So we already knew that we needed doulas who could support mothers after birth. But unfortunately, because it's Medicaid, the state has to go slow. They made the bill only to be a labor doula. So I'm glad that the New York Times is bringing up the fact that we need postpartum doulas. But again, as midwives, we already knew that. So they'll tell us what we know, but I'm glad it's in the paper, so right on for that. And then just, working for so many years, for the last 40 years with NANA, ACNM, US Mirror, and a bunch of other organizations across the nation, ACOG, I really saw the struggle of the cultural competency piece really not being strong. People really want to do the good work, but not knowing how to enter other communities, how to be respectful of other communities, afraid to ask questions of other communities, people feeling siloed. So I decided to create the Shafia Monroe Consulting Birth Exchange to help us to bridge that, because I know that we want what's best for family, but how do you get there? So that's been my work since that time. And then there was a shooting in Seattle last year. A pregnant woman was killed, shot 17 times. She called the police for a break-in, and then they shot in front of her children. So I decided, of course, I've always heard that. When I saw that the woman who was Black drove into the White House, you all know the case, they shot and killed her, babies in the car. We talk about postpartum depression. And then I see the man walk to the White House and go upstairs to their home and not get shot. Yes, I was pissed off, I'll admit it. I was the angry, pissed off Black woman, and I mobilized to create MAMA, Midwives, Others, and Mothers of Line Members. Why aren't we as midwives, why have we not addressed this issue as midwives? Why are we letting women pregnant get killed by the police? When I did the research, they've killed Native American women also who are suicidal. They're calling for help. They go and shoot them on the reservation. They're shooting Latino women. So the majority of women of color are being killed while pregnant early postpartum and being tased. So I think as midwives, this is a charge for us to take this on. We can't just say that we want babies to live after birth. The mother has to be alive, and that is a mature mortality issue. So I created Mama, and so we're just getting off the ground, and you'll be hearing from that more. We have a Facebook page, you can go and like it. I think it says Join Mama. You have to look for the whole thing. Midwives, Others, and Mothers Alliance Against Religious Violence. So those are some of the things that I work on around. Thank you. Those are the things that I think are important as we talk about cultural inclusivity. Even something like women being killed while they're pregnant, that's also an issue. So I'm going to talk today about cultural inclusivity, and the issue is, this is not entirely a PowerPoint, you all can read the other stuff there, but I like to walk, dance, all the time dance. And I love the fact we're all talking about dance, because we tell moms now, every kind of YouTube you see the mothers always dancing, so I'm glad that we're finally there, officially. And so I want to talk about cultural inclusivity, where we all grow and thrive. And when I heard that as my title, it was quite exciting to know that we think on that level. At the same time, like, wow, that's really like high end, that we all can thrive and grow. But it's important because we think about how we're going to get to the next level. We all do have a right to thrive and grow. And as I mentioned, women being killed who are pregnant based on what they look like and tased. We know about mortality, and we know that young men of color are being shot all the time, every single day. When I talk about the Black midwife historically and why I do this work, when I formed this work back in 1970, and when I picked the book to read about infant mortality, I read about these Black women in the South with no resources, ducking from KKK, walking through the woods, and still making a difference in delivering every single baby, regardless of race, really showing cultural inclusivity. I said I wanted to be like them. They are my spiritual mentors. They channel through me to do the work that I do. And so the concept that we all have the right to grow and thrive is a nice concept, but we're not there yet. We're all not growing and thriving. We're going to hear about what the statistics are around that and how we can get there. But cultural inclusivity means that we are going to be able to begin to include people who we have, I don't want to say we're biased, but more that we don't have information about. We've watched the media on TV, and so we have fears and assumptions. When we see them, we may back up, we may smile, we may look away, things that I personally experience all the time, maybe other people as well. When we go to the job, we don't get the hello, a less retention rate, a less of a employment rate, of not being seen as a leader, a colleague, an expert in the field. All that has to do with cultural inclusivity. And the reason why this is so important because the demographics in this country is changing. And so we really don't have a choice. It's nice to do it willingly. They say you can drag you willing or unwillingly. It's really up to you. You don't have to be inclusive, but the next 40 years is going to be very challenging not to be. And so it's an ethical issue, it's the right thing to do, but it's also a legal issue. There's so much through CDC and medical schools and nursing schools that say that you have to have cultural competency now as a requirement and not as an elective. That's how important we know that it is now. So when next one here. Okay. So cultural inclusivity is not the same as cultural competency. So cultural competency is like the foundation, it's also the umbrella. And under those things are like cultural humility, cultural inclusivity, cultural sensitivity, cultural awareness, culture. So we have all these different programs, sections, but in the end, if we were culturally competent, we would automatically culturally inclusive. But I'm not going to talk about competency so much because I was asked about inclusivity. So inclusivity is like a smaller section, that's like a baby step to get started, because competency has a much bigger aspect. And also, this is not an overnight learning thing. This is like a lifetime learning. You're not going to get this today or tomorrow or next year because it's never existed before. This is new. We didn't get this in the 60s, 70s, 80s, or the 90s, or even really 10 years ago. And even though the research says that cultural competency really made the circuit 2007, where the medical schools and the research said we have to start to include this, we now have over 1,000 peer reviews on cultural competency. That was just 2007, though it came up in 1968, no one was really talking about it. So it's new, so don't be hard on yourselves that this concept is something that we have to become familiar with. But I wanted to think about cultural competency growing up, and I got the title. Okay, so cultural competency, cultural inclusivity, what does that mean? I try to think about all the work I did and grew up as a child, and I come from a family that's very active, politically active, all that kind of good stuff. And then I remember that, I remember cultural inclusivity is when I watch people on TV get beat up for sitting at the counter in Mississippi. I remember cultural inclusivity when I remember dogs biting children for segregating schools. So it wasn't cultural inclusivity, I remember cultural exclusivity. So that's the opposite. There was no culture. So that's my memory that it didn't exist. We had the civil rights movement, the human rights movement, and the feminist movement, remembering women being excluded, couldn't be a CEO. If you had a baby, you couldn't go back to work. They had assumptions about you. So women also being excluded. And even the home birth movement, exclusion, not inclusivity. You can go to a meeting, it's like having a baby at home, like, you can't be in this conversation. You know, you're not part of the allopathic medical model. So there's a lot of different memories that you might have about not seeing cultural inclusivity. So that's when I said to myself, I'm really excited that I had a chance to talk about this and what it meant and what it still means today that we could get away from that. And to be realizing that we're in a society that was violent around integration. A country did not want inclusivity, that fought really to make it not possible. And though we have legal laws that now so you have the right to sit where you want to sit, marry who you want to marry, identify with your own sexual orientation, interracial marriage, all things were not allowed. Now we have it, but not really. It still is not where we want to be. And in terms of even the origin of the birth centers, 35 years ago on the website it says that the birth center was designed for women who were privately insured, highly educated, and middle class who wanted options. We're talking white American women. We weren't talking women of color or even gay lesbian women. This is the middle class movement for birth centers. So of course it's going to look like a white movement, but that's what's formed for us. And now we have to take that and change that foundation to say that birth centers are really for all women and not just for middle class women who are highly educated but privately insured. That's not the majority. They exist, but there's also other women in that. So until we have to work on that foundation, we're going to still see birth centers looking predominantly one way and serving a predominant population that does not reflect the demographics. And is it okay if I stand down here? Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're going to do a little exercise about self-awareness. So I'm going to self-awareness thing here. So when I'm going to call names, you're supposed to stand up. So if you are a birth center owner, please stand up. Okay, look around the room. This is self-awareness. Who's in the room? This is a practice. What you do when you're at your job. Who's in the room? Okay, let's give them a round of applause. Who is a birth center staff person? Please stand up. Birth center staff people. Oh, wow. Another round of applause. Thank you. If you are a birth center client, have ever been a birth center client, stand up. Oh, okay. Thank you. If you're a midwife, please stand up. Wow. If you're a doula, please stand up. Thank you. Lactation consultants, or IBCLCs. Okay. How about if you're a healthcare provider who's not a midwife, please stand up. Health providers who are not midwives. Okay. And if you're a public health professional, please stand up. Thank you. If you're a birth justice worker, please stand up. Everybody stand up. Hold this stuff. Hold this thing. And then lastly, if you're a funder or a policymaker, stand up. We got a funder and policymaker. Yeah, we want to know you. Okay. So the purpose of this exercise, besides us needing to know who's in the room, and then we talk about cultural inclusivity. For my culture, we want to know who's in the room. We're going to ask who you are. We're going to know if you're the big mama, the big papa, who's going to watch my baby, whose car can I borrow, who got the prom dress, who got the best greens, whatever it might be. So you want to get used to doing that, but also in this room, maybe there's something I did not include. I might have left out a category in here. And so if I did, I want to apologize because this is all about being visible. You know, we're talking about inclusivity, everyone being seen in the room. So if I left somebody out, I'm sure that I did some category. Who owns 10 dogs? Who had a loss of a baby? Whose mother might be in the hospital? So many categories. And we're gonna forget as birth center owner and as birth worker, we're gonna forget, and it's okay, we can apologize, but that person felt invisible, maybe, not cared about, unidentified, isolated. So that's what it feels like we're not inclusive. We don't see them, we don't include them, and they feel isolated, and then they leave our practice, they leave the job, and we're right back again trying to be inclusive. I might need my Denise or Alex or somebody here. I think I'll go up and have my thing. So I'll stay here, thank you. So the diversifying the workforce is our goal, to understand that, and to meet the U.S. maternity needs and the changing demographics. And so the objectives are to figure out if you're able to increase cultural inclusivity, what are the steps to doing that? We'll discuss that. Identify skills to diversify the workforce, and we call the cause of infant mortality. That's one of the driving factors of why we want to diversify the workforce. Our maternity outcomes of all races are not doing well. I just want to say that. We look at when the bow breaks, a natural cause of it. Who's seen when the bow breaks? Well, if you haven't, please Google that. For $1.99, you can rent it, and you should see it. Dr. Luke, 2 neonatologists did research. And everything I talk about is research. It's not my opinion. It's years of research. It's looking to see what's going on. I'm giving you evidence-based information. That it says that even if white America pulled out of this country as a separate country, they still would have a lower poor birth rate than the European countries. So the country itself is not doing a good job. But when we look at the ethnicities of people who has the worst outcome, it drives us to understand what's happening. That makes us look at cultural inclusivity and diversifying the workforce. Because when I go get my hair done, I want to go see a dentist, even though I don't have a problem with other races, we are who we are. And it's okay that I have a person who's black, or they're Asian, or they're lesbian, or they're trans. That's your community. And so it's okay that I see them. And we want to have, I want to go to your birth center as a Latina woman, a black woman, a biracial woman, a gay lesbian woman, a Irish woman, and see a reflection where I pay my money, that I'm not just seeing the same people. And what that does for you as a birth center, it ups your ability to serve people better, you get better outcomes. And even though the stats are saying that birth centers already have a higher rate, according to the New England Medical Journal 1989, that birth centers have a satisfactory, a safe, and a cost-saving outcome, and they improve birth outcome. But if it's not inclusive and diverse, that means only one group is getting it. And if I want to pull other people in, I need to reflect that in my workforce. And then know why we need to do that. So the demographics. So America is changing. That's a good thing. For a lot of people, they're not happy about it. You know, we have the old immigration thing, but it's not a political discussion. People have the right to believe and do what they want to do. I do believe that. This is a free speech institution called the United States, so I respect that. But at the same time, whether we like it or not, we're seeing that in 2012, the long one is white American for 2012. And then when we look at blacks is 12%, Asian is 5%. Move over here. So the Asian's 5, Native American is 1, Hispanic is 17. So we get to 2060, we see that the blue, which is white American, has decreased, black/African American has increased, and Native American is staying the same. I always bring that up. Why is the Native American population not growing? I think, again, as birth workers and midwives, we should care about that. I do. I care that I'm standing on their land right now, and they're only 1%. There's a serious problem with that. You know, we should not be okay with that. We need to find out what's going on. We need to go find our Native sisters. The one that I know most right now is Nicole Gonzalez, C&M, New Mexico, Navajo, who's working her butt off to get a birth center going and to save and work with her people. And when I hear people tell me, oh, I worked on the reservation for 15 years and they didn't train a Native sister, I got a problem with that. What are you doing? Don't be the great hope. Empower the people who you serve who don't look like you. Lead them so I can walk away. And those women at whatever reservation I worked on, they should have had midwives if you were there for 15 years. So I'm not the person to tell that to. I'm not impressed. I'm impressed when you say, I was at 15, I got 5 Native sisters who are midwives. Then you're going to get a big high five, you know? So, yeah, 1% shame. You know, shame, that's genocide. You know, so it's unfortunate. And so we can, as a group, do something. We should do something. So under the age of 18, we see that white American is 53 for 2012, but when we get to 2060, it'll be 33%, and the biggest number will be 38%. So we see the big influx of Latino population growing. And then we get down to 2012. Hasta bueno. ¿Hablas español? Yo trato. Okay, I try. So if you don't know Spanish, now you know. Learn it. So, and 65 in 2012, we're going to see mainly white Americans go into their golden years, and we're going to see by 2060, it'll be less because there's less reproduction going on, and we'll see that the Latino population and other groups are growing. So we haven't mentioned the fact that we still have a very high increase of multiracial families. People are really intermarrying with different races now, so that's a whole other group. I have 30 minutes, I'm maybe halfway done, seriously. So, so we see that that's why we have to have a diverse workforce. But this is what's happening. We haven't talked about the Bosnian and the Russian families who are coming here. I just want to tell you one little thing that I think that people not be aware of. So even though we say that the demographics is changing, every generation who comes here, by the second, third generation, become Americanized. So even though we're saying that the white population is getting less, with having Bosnians coming here who are white Europeans, and Russians also, to us, they're white, by the time they get the third generation, they'll be white American. That's going to bring the numbers back up again. So just to be aware of that. And infant rate by race. So again, why we need the inclusivity. Does everybody know about infant mortality here? Raise your hand if you know. Okay, some hands went up. Well, the reason why that's a big deal because a country is measured by its infant mortality rate around the whole world. The first thing that any government looks at, any policymaker, UNICEF, World Health Organization, anybody has any kind of clout says right away, let me see your stats on your infant mortality rate. Because if you cannot keep your citizens alive, the future, then there's something wrong with the country. And so America has something wrong because we can't even keep our own citizens to live to be 1, as opposed to Netherlands. They only have 3 babies per 1,000, or Cubans, 3 babies per 1,000. We're at 5 for white American, and we're at 11, depending on the state, for African Americans. So those are issues that we have to look at. And then this is something too for you as employees, because you're employees if you own a birth center, you're hiring people. So we know that regardless of the education status, if you're an African American woman, no matter how much money you make, you're still going to have a higher rate of infant mortality compared to a white American woman. So you're a birth center owner, and you're hiring black women, Latina women, Asian women, women of color at your center, and they're feeling the stress of being isolated, the microaggression, not being heard, not feeling they're really included. What that actually does is causes their cortisol levels to raise up, which gives them a premature birth. So as a birth center, we're about making babies be healthy. We don't want to be part of the problem. So it's so important that we understand how to have people in our institutions and respect them so they go full term. And that's the highest reason why black lawyers, doctors, nurses, these are educated women who have the money and they have the resources and they still cannot go full term. So I want you all to be aware of that. Hispanic infant mortality rates. So just in terms of, when we talk about Hispanic, we have to break it down. That's just in a catch-all. The whole thing about racial and it's really a made-up system. It seems really very easy that really is only the human race, but the government, the powers that be, broke people up. So we have the word Hispanic, and under Hispanic we have the Puerto Rican, we have Mexican, we have Central and South American, we have Cuban. So Puerto Rican have a higher infant mortality rate within the Hispanic community. So you need to know that. So when someone says, oh, I work with Hispanic women, well, what Hispanic woman? You have to take the time to find out. That's inclusivity. As I said, be aware. Stand up if you're a birth worker, stand up and let me know, how do you represent as a Latina woman or a Hispanic woman? And which one should I say, by the way? We're going to ask that question. And then based on what we're seeing here, we're going to know how to engage them in our workforce as well as serve them as a client. So some of the reasons for infant mortality. So you may already know this, but genetic defects is the first cause of why babies don't live to be one. The second one is premature birth. The third is low birth weight. And used to be SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. They changed it some years back to SWIDE, sudden infant unexplained death syndrome. Accidents, systemic racism, microaggressions. So genetic defects, babies, it mainly comes from white American. Babies have a higher rate of suffering from genetic defects. And then it's off the record. If you've lost a baby here, you have my condolences. And I mean that because a lot of times we do these talks about infant mortality and people in the room have actually had lost themselves. So I take this conversation in a sensitive light because I don't know who's in this room, what people have experienced. You do have my condolences if anybody in your family or perhaps has lost a baby. We do care about all babies living to see their first birthday, but we are concerned that we saw that previous slide with this particular group that no matter what, keeps a higher rate of their babies not living. And how does that relate to cultural inclusivity? And how does that relate to diversifying the workforce? We're going to get back to that. Premature birth comes from stress, stress of the microaggressions. And so you have to really look at yourself as, like I said, as an employer. If you work in a birth center, if you're going to create a birth center, if you're a birth center owner, how are you making sure that people feel included to reduce the stress load? And you may not be aware of the little things that happen that make people feel stressed out. And if you're a person of color, probably a lot of things in this country make you feel stressed out, but a lot of things are always happening that if you're not of color, you may not be aware of. And so when someone comes to your place of work as an employer and they had a stressful day because there was a illegal shooting of an innocent person within their back by the police force, or Flint still giving kids, lead in the water, and that's your family's there because they're low income, you're going to come to work with a lot of stress on you, and maybe your way of working that may not be the best. As I think as healers, which midwives are, who specialize in women's work, that we have to be sensitive. I'm not saying change your policies and your laws around that, but know that they had a bad day. And I'll tell you another fact to look at. When there's a shooting of white children in America, the school shuts down and there's free counseling for a week. Are you aware of that?
Yeah.
Everybody, raise your hand.
Yeah.
If you wasn't, it's a fact. When there's a shooting of a black child in the neighborhood, nothing shuts down. It's business as usual. It doesn't mean that person who has experienced it does not have a bad day. So there's no support for that. So I talked to a woman who told me that whenever there's a shooting now in her neighborhood, an illegal shooting, we're talking about the police shooting because those are public servants. We don't expect it from them. I'm not talking about, people shooting each other. That's a whole other story. That she takes a day off. She calls her job. Her job allows her to have a mental health day because she's so stressed out. That's being culturally inclusive. That's not a cultural issue. That's a social determinant that happens to a particular cultural group, not because they did anything wrong, because of the systemic racism, the microaggressions over there. Those are the things that are very real. And again, if you watch Natural Causes when the bar breaks, they give us the evidence of what happens every time you go to a store and someone follows you. It's like putting your foot on your engine and gassing your engine that keeps going and going. Where's your engine out? So the same with this. The same with the concept of weatherization. So low birth weight is the other issue. We talked about the SWATs, the accident, systemic racism, and the microaggressions. These are the causes that we want to look at. So some of the ways to begin being culturally inclusive is if you want to hire people who look like your community or not your community, it's getting a cultural broker. You have to go to the community. I know that's something different, but cultural broker on there? Yeah, okay. Those are basic things. But then you want to go to the community. I'm going to use Native American. I live near Arizona, and there's the Sioux tribe. I'm going to have to go to the reservation or call the Sioux Native American Association. They have them, ask to meet with one of the leaders, and then pay them. Pay them like a consultant. It's called a cultural broker. They said that I want to expand my practice. I'm looking for a woman or a man or a person who would like to work this position. What's the best way of going about that? Even just putting things on Facebook, sending out through the recruit system, that's standard. That's not inclusivity. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't learn that way. Health, we all don't think that way. So you have to take the time to adjust your job description for who you want to work at your site and go into that community to pull them in. When you interview them, we're not saying have double standard, but interview differently. If it's a person who, just be aware of how we interview. So we're using dominant King James English and expectation. We're taught that we come to the job interview with a suit and a jacket on and a briefcase. So I just said, I'm hiring a woman who's a Sioux. She might come with moccasins, she could. Her suede dress, her beads, her 2 braids, and she's excellent. Am I gonna hire her? Or am I gonna say she doesn't meet the profile? That's just a question. We're talking about inclusivity. How willing are we willing to be inclusive? We have cases where women can't go to work because they have their hair in braids. That's their natural hair. They have their hair locked. They can't literally get the job. They have to change their hair. We're hearing that people have certain names will not be hired. The Mohammeds and the Aishas, people who wear hijabs. People don't want to hire them. There's assumptions, true or not, because of the media or belief system. So these are things you have to look at if you want to keep a diverse workforce. How willing are you to change and adjust, get people who don't look like you, who can be themselves? Because we talked about invisibility, talked about when I grew up thinking about cultural inclusivity, or I only remember cultural exclusion. So it's cultural exclusion that we're not going to allow people to come the way that they are in life. So that's one of the steps to cultural inclusivity. Also, to be welcoming to the people around cultural inclusivity. Listen. We're talking about your peers. See them as experts. Put them in leadership positions. Trust what they're telling you, that they know what they're talking about. Let them know, I hear what you're saying. I'm going to look into that. I'm going to check that out. Don't accept the rumors. Don't silo when we all go to the water cooler and that person who's new or different never gets to come to the water cooler. Keep our personal conversations that we all met last night for a cup or a drink and they weren't invited. That's your personal business, but don't discuss it during work time to make that person not feel included. Don't form the cliques. So The Joint Commission says that effective communication, cultural competence, and patience, and family-centered care is important components of safe, quality care. So effective communication, I mentioned that already, how you put together your job description, how you hire the person, how you interview them, how you orientate them, how you do your evaluations, all has to do with effective communication to keep people in your workforce to maintain the diversity. And you can hire people, but you could have a high turnover, so you can't keep the diversity. So if that's your case, check it out. You need to create an evaluation component to see, are people staying at your job? Do an exit interview. No, I'm leaving because I really, I'm going to school. I'm leaving because this place has been very toxic to me. It's been very stressful. And I tell you, in 40 years, working around the country, and I mentioned all the different organizations, ACNM, MANA, US Mirror, and many others, I hear women of color talk about, to me, in private, phone calls, in person, that it's very difficult for them. It's difficult to work in these places, it's difficult to go to school, it's difficult to get a preceptor, people don't understand them, they're doing cultural appropriation, they're being biased, they don't have cultural literacy, they judge how they talk, they judge about their children. It's really bad. And the studies say, I know Maria's coming up next to talk after me, but even midwives have to take a year off of college. It's so hard. They actually have to take a year off when they show that white American women don't take a year off. They can just get through it. But because of the instruction that's going on, they have to actually take a break. So be aware that the effective communication is very important. And even though we're talking about family-centered care, we cannot get the family-centered care if we don't have family-centered staff within our family as an employer. So the recruitment, I mentioned, look at your marketing strategy. How do you pull people in? I hear all the time, I get a phone call. Shafia, Miss Shafia, whatever they call me. I've been trying to find a black woman, Latina woman, gay, lesbian woman. Do you have any ideas? I get a lot, I can't find people. But the people are out here. They're in this room, they're outside the room. So we need to figure out what's the strategy for you to find people to diversify your workforce. Look at your marketing strategy. Don't use the same method. If I work in a black group and I want someone white to work, I'm not gonna ask the black person, who can I get? I'm gonna go to the white community or the Asian community and let them know I'm looking for somebody. Because my people just probably know as much as I know, not always, but to be okay to go out into the community. Look at why you feel uncomfortable and challenge yourself around that. And then cultural, I'm going to go to the greeting model. So every culture is different. Again, when we are walking around the neighborhood, I want you all as an assignment today, when you go out to a restaurant and someone is in front of you who may not represent the demographics right now of the society, to see how they are greeted by the restaurant owner. So, for example, you'll go in front of me to get, I'll just do the airplane, I ride the plane all the time. Good morning to everybody. When I get there, they just look at me, I have to say good morning. So, which means that when they see me, they're uncomfortable. We often don't get the same treatment. Make sure your birth center is greeting your staff the same way, that you're talking to everybody in your staff. You're greeting them, you're saying hello to them, you're giving them eye contact, thank you. You're giving them eye contact and making them feel that they're the same as everyone else. But just kind of observe how you might notice that in the community. Health literacy. We are getting people to work with us who are CNMs, PhDs, masters. So we're not saying to dumb down the literature, but still be aware of how you promote the literature, and particularly for your clients. If you're going to have people who are from other parts of the world, not just that, put it only in Spanish, but other languages, and also be aware that there's different types of Spanish. You have the Castilian Spanish that people I talk, they don't talk that way. So whatever that group of Latino people speak, make sure the language also is the words for them. All the words aren't the same based on what part of the world they come from, to be aware of that as well. And then retention. Engage the people, ask them, create an evaluation process, a place that they can be safe to ask the question. You say, we want to hear how's it going. If you think you're going to be fired or terminated, then you may not ask the question. Find a community person or a leader or mediator to come in.